Hello, my name is Keziah, and I will be presenting the article The Emergence of the Five-Terrace Mountain Cult in Korea by Sangyop. Sangyop is from South Korea, and he got his bachelor's in 2010 and master's in 2013 from the Department of Philosophy at Seoul National University. He got his PhD in the department from Religious Studies at Stanford University, and he is a postdoctoral fellow at Heidelberg University. Here are some of his past works down below. In this article, Lee mostly compares the stories of the cult of Odesan from two historians, Iryon and Minchi. Lee says that these Koryo historians collected manuscripts found on Odesan and formed a thesis of their own. These stories of the old records were interrelated with references to one another, and they together claim that Mount Ode is a genuine abode of Buddhist deities and that the devotional practices on the mountain are authentic Buddhist practices. However, Lee states that these texts are not very accurate or well informed about reflections of the cult history and calls for a more careful and critical reading of them. Lee uses historical analysis and comparative analysis where he compares both texts. This is Mount Ode, also known as Odesan. San means mountain in Korean, so that's why it's Odesan. This mountain is still popular for Korean Buddhists as a destination, although the temples were built many times. The configuration of the five terraces, as well as the Buddhist deities worshipped thereon, largely confirms to the descriptions of the two Koryo dynasty accounts of the cult. Iryon was a Buddhist scholar monk, and he wrote the Samguk Yusa, also known as the Memorabilia of the Three Kingdoms. Minchi was a Confucian official and court historian. He wrote the Odesan Sajok, also known as the Traces of the Past Events of Mount Ode, henceforth the past events. Both Iryon and Minchi state that their accounts of the Shila Ode cult are based on certain old records, and Lee argues that both these accounts were to a great extent faithful reproductions of the same old records. Iryon's entries are mostly products of his own compilation and adaptations of the primary sources he gathered, rather than his own original work. But Minchi's past events is an independent compilation of stories about Mount Ode. It's unlikely that the old records of Iryon and the records of Minchi were the same physical set document. This present study explores an alternative approach to the two Koryo dynasty accounts of the Mount Ode cults. The present study explores an alternative approach to the two Koryo dynasty accounts of the Mount Ode cult. It investigates what would come of reading these texts without making the two assumptions that have guided the previous studies of the cult's history. The old records will reveal that they were manuscripts, copies of propaganda literature compiled and circulated by the Mount Ode Buddhists, and the purpose was to establish the historical and religious legitimacy of their cultic practice. Both Iryon's memorabilia and Minchi's past events present their accounts of the Mount Ode cult with three stories: Chajang's search for Manjusri, Bodhisattva in China and in Shila, religious activities of two Shila princes on Mount Ode, and layman Shinyo's encounter with the deities of Wurchong Temple. Their form of Buddhism should be attributed to their cultural and geographical isolation. And the cultic practitioners of Mount Ode were isolated from the mainstream Shila society. The cult should be understood as an indigenous, independent materialization of the floating abstract idea of Manjusri's Five-Terrace mountain, and they were not able to participate in Shila people's discourse on Chajang and his pilgrimage to Mount Wutai and propagate their own version of the story to the rest of society. Here are some terms that I have encountered while reading this article. Nade Hyangan is a vernacular language from the Shila dynasty. This vernacular language, Nade Hyangan, was the language that the old records were written in, and it was eventually rendered into proper literary Chinese before they could be comprehensible to literati. Oryu Songjun is the 5 groups of holy ones. Ulchin Teguk means the great country of Ulchin. And Yangteja means the two crown princes. And in the text of the historians, they represent the 2 crown princes as the elder crown prince and the younger crown prince. But in Sinitic custom, there can be only 1 crown prince at a time. These are my own thoughts of this article. There were a lack of visual components, and it would have been nice to see visuals of these historical documents or any visualizations of the cult or pictures of Mount Ode. Personally, I thought that this essay was a bit scattered as he inserted his own analysis of comparing the 2 historians, also while including their texts. His analysis and the historical texts were intertwined, so it was a bit confusing to differentiate the 2 entries at the times. However, overall, I thought that Lee had very good comparisons, and I thought that he brought his own opinions and his own evidence as to why he brought his own evidence very well. Thank you.